couple of years ago. Um, so I have been, um, sorry, am I still audible?
Yes, yes, you are. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I came to UCT. Actually, my first job at UCT was for Shoko. That's when I
Mm.
finished my studies at UWC. So I came here. The thing is, when I was, well, as most of you have seen the video, I hope that I did.
Yeah.
So I went to a special school, and one of the things that at that time we were sort of trained, some of us at least, was that disability does not really matter. So when I completed my matric, I came to WC, I did psychology, and I finished my honors in social anthropology. So when I came to UCT to work for Shoko as a research intern, I had no desire at all of involving myself in any disability related issues at all. I thought I am okay now. I'm part of the community. I am working, and my work was around because Shoko is I don't know if students are aware, but was more of a volunteer kind of center institution here at UCT. So my role was there to look at how could Shoko incentivize student as volunteers, what kind of mechanisms, so looking at what the institutions are doing. But then at that time, must have been 2014, 13, somewhere there. So there was a huge gang violence in Menenberg. So it kind of shifted again, looking at the prevention of gang violence because our UCT students were going there. So you can see that from that sort of angle, I had no involvement in any disability related work at all. Um, but once my contract ended, and so I then moved to Media 24, where they, oh, sorry, am I still audible, right?
Yes, yes, yes. We can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then when I in 20, I think yeah 16, so I joined Media 24 as a manager for. They had a learnership for personal disabilities. Um, so I went in to manage the project, just a journalism project. So I went in there thinking that okay, well, it was even my first time, so I didn't know what to expect. But because then uh, I had multiple disabilities as part of my uh, colleagues or so, because I was managing the entire project in the province. I had a couple of disabilities from dyslexia, autism,
Mm.
visual impairment, and I had no experience at all of these sort of disabilities. And
Mm.
uh, but and then in the meetings, one would often be expected to be an expert of disability issues. That
Mm.
okay, Benito, what could we do? But we have done this, and when I go down, we say, oh, but this does not working for me. What could I do? So then, me being a bit of a nerd or researcher, I quickly went to see what kind of course could I do that
Mm.
could equip me with some skills and knowledge around disability accommodation. Because for me, it's not just about uh, giving student or people that's the learners devices. As we have done the work because they
Mm.
did provide the devices, but I felt as if there's more that we could do. Then I came across the disability studies MOOC that Professor Mackenzie and I forgot the lady's name, but it was a very short MOOC around disability in education, and
Mm.
I did that course. So once I finished that, and then there was a link about PG Deep, which believe that some of you are doing. So then I enrolled for that PG Deep again with the hope that I'm just doing this because of that work. But as they say, I didn't know that actually this would be where I find my niche in the space, because through that journey, the PG Deep, the following year, I was invited, as Ike said, to join the TEDI, because then we're doing teacher disability inclusion, and I focused primarily on visual impairment and accommodation in classroom. And then a couple of years later on, CILT, which is another institution at UCT, they were looking for ETA, Educational Technical Advisor, because the UCT was transitioning from our previous LMS, Learning Management System. So part of our work as the ETAs was to work with learning designers to see ways in which that transition. So they were looking at when they move the course from Vola to Amatoba, what could be done. And then my job there again was around accessibility, the navigation and so on. And the following couple of, I think 2 years later, I then transitioned to learning design again at CILT, where now I became fully involved in the course, because again, for me, the issue has always been, it's always interesting that people do design, and then they will bring it to me and say, is this working? Where is it not working? Whereas with the learning design, that's when I've realized that actually you don't need to involve me at the end of the project. Rather, let's work together from the conception, when you're still conceptualizing the idea. Think around inclusion, think around accessibility. And it's been the work that I've been doing since then, with TEDI, with IDEA. We did, I think that's for 3 courses. We did the UDL course, Universal Design for Learning course. I co-designed with a colleague of mine, Chantel. I think she might see her at some point in this sessions. And then we also worked with the Lego Foundation. And then the last one is what we did last day. We worked with another NGOs, where our role again there was to design courses, inclusive education short course for teacher assistant, because fortunately in some schools, at least in the province, they are sort of driving this inclusion, and then they do employ teacher assistant in the classroom. But then the problem then becomes, when this teacher assistant come in with the student, and then there's a learner with a disability, then what's the next step? Because then what we found there is that the teacher assistant will say, well, I normally sit with this child in the corner and I try to work with them. So our role then was to say, okay, with your job as a teacher assistant, this is what you could do to ensure that the curriculum is accessible, the learner becomes part of the class. And I think it's going so well, because I've managed to, at the end of this year, inclusive education is coming to South Africa. So our abstract, and based on that project, we are going to present our findings to give our colleagues in the field around inclusive education what has worked and what we have done. So yeah, that's me in short. And then other than that, yes, I'm blind, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but as part of my social life, I love very, very good red wine. That's me. Thanks, Ike.
Always appropriate. Some of the students are laughing. They're sending laughing emojis. Benedict, is it possible to if it's not possible, it's fine. But it's just that one of the students put in the chat. Can we see Benedict?
Oh dear.
Yeah. But if it's not, it's fine, because that's your video.
My problem with actually, it's funny that you're saying so. I was thinking of writing a post around online pedagogies, and how I find sometimes this online pedagogies, Yes, they are very accommodative because anybody could join. But I often find that how we do them, we often sort of box people to conform to certain standard. But for me, my main concern with them, with the camera on, is that I often find was, oh, we can only see your chest. Then you to move my. Oh no, it's only your chin. And I thought, okay, to avoid so many let me just, unless if my sister was around, I was going to ask her to come to the room just to make sure that I'm positioned
Explain.
correctly.
Yeah,
I could, but
but
if it's okay, I'll send my picture for those that want to
no,
see
it's fine.
me.
No, Benedict is actually fine because the videos, those 3-part videos where you talked about your experience in special school, they were actually able to see you. I think
Okay.
he just one, yeah. So,
But the only problem is that I've cut my dreadlocks last year. If they were visible on the videos,
whoa.
I cut my dreadlocks last year.
Okay, now I'm actually supporting the student, but it's fine. Just kidding.
No, but again, it's something that uh, I think those who know me, I am all even trying to write a paper about it because throughout the years, I had dreadlocks as part of my identity. And what was fascinating for me, actually, after I cut them, I had deep reflections about now that I've cut them, what would be my image to the world? Because I used to think that when people see me, they would say, "Oh, that guy with the dreadlocks is not the blind man." So now that I've cut them off, I had huge, I don't want to say depression, but sort of identity crisis about how will my image, what will be my image now? Am I going to be perceived as the blind man, or what then would replace? Because at least how to use them, even if when I walk on the street and I hear people talking about, oh, Azintle, the dress, oh, they're so beautiful. I'm like, okay, they're talking about my dreadlocks, so this is the cue for me to ask them and say, sorry, I would like to cross the street. And because of what I heard them saying, I know that it's a great opportunity for me to connect and engage with them. But so now that I've cut them off, it's more like, okay. But yeah, I think
Thanks,
now
Benedict. So,
we are
wow,
deviating to so many things.
that's a big
And
eye
then
opener.
lastly, what I did, I've also been lecturing um, academic writing here at UCT for the past 2 years. It's a first year semester course for first year student. So I've been lecturing that course. And what's fascinating for me again is because of the work that I've done with Amatuba, I am able to do the work independently. So I go to a lecture hall, um, and then I do the lecturing. They submit the work. I can do the work independently.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
the importance of accessibility.
Yes.
Making sure that happens. Thanks very much, Benedict, for that deep and personal. That's one thing I always like about Benedict, that he's real. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He shows what it means to be real human being. Doesn't put this there and that there. So Benedict, somebody is actually, one of the students actually has dreadlocks. The student is concurring with you in the chat. The student says, her name is Alice. Alice says, that's my worry as well. As I have always had dreadlocks my entire life, I am scared of what that identity crisis, because that's how people have known me as and identify me. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the questions. Maybe Ilam, do you want to come first with that question which you asked? Because it will be good to just hear what Benedict thinks about it. Good to just
Yes,
hear.
sure.
Yeah. Benedict, so this was a question Ilam posed, and I just said, you know what? Just ask the same question. Let's just hear what Benedict's view about it. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Ilam, go
Hi,
ahead.
good evening, Benedict. Thank you very much for
Sorry,
coming
people.
through.
We won't go individual introductions, okay? But when you ask your question, just say your name and what you do. Yeah, and then go on
Okay.
with it. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Ilam. I am the disability practitioner at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. And my question is, how do you measure the severity of visual impairments And then secondly, how linked to that is in terms of a spectacle wearer and somebody that that is identified as a person with disabilities, how would you measure the severity to know that that person is in fact someone that is classified as a person with disabilities, if that makes sense? Thank you.
Yes, it does. I think because we live in a world where things, I mean, especially when it comes to visual impairment, we go through the ophthalmic these divisions. They're the one that would indicate the severity of the blindness. But for me, as an individual, I can't. It's only through the sort of that testing that would determine to us how blind a person is. I hope that answered the question, because I ideally could say a person can say I can't see, but I think this is where, to some degree, the medical model would fit in. Then to say we're going to measure the severity of your blindness. It's quite interesting you even say so, because a friend of mine used the term um, severity, and for me, I didn't even know that there's a thing called severity of visual impairment. For me, that's total blindness or visual impaired. But I think for me, the only answer I could give, it's more from a medical perspective than anything else.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Benedict. And Unati actually help broaden that response more in terms of that severity. She talked about the ICF and how, we the classification that moves from mild, moderate, severe, and profound. So she was also adding that, once anything that starts from that mild, mild to moderate, then you need to start looking at the limitation. But she also advised that the ICF is a good tool to also help guide, in looking at the severity. Yeah, just like you said.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ilham. I hope that was answered your question.
Not much, but it's fine. I'm going to continue my conversation with Unati. Thank you. I think that's my question, to be more clear, Benedict, is I'm a spectacle user.
Yes.
And I'm not classified as a person with disabilities, but I cannot work without my spectacles. So my job entails allocating devices to people with disabilities that qualify for funding through NSFAS. And I often get requests from people that go to a general Specsavers, for example, in the mall, which is a shop that gives that prescribes glasses, where you can go to an optometrist, not an ophthalmologist, an optometrist. You go for a general eye test. The way I do it is, since a child, you'll go for the test. They check based on the sizes of your letters, how far you can see. So it starts with the letters being huge, and then they reduce it, and then, yes, they prescribe your spectacles. So I get people that go to Specsavers and get a disability annexure, which is NSFAS's official form, in order for you to receive funding as a student with disabilities. They get it stamped by the Specsavers, like I would, and then they'll claim as a person with disabilities. So I'm just trying to distinguish, where is
But
that
what does your policy
line?
say? Isn't supposed
I must
supposed
write
to
the
be working?
I need to write the policy. That
I
is the
think,
thing.
yeah, maybe what does the policy say? Because for me, my assumption would be at least an ophthalmologist, not an optometrist, with the
Yes,
right person.
that's what I was trying to gain clarity on, because there's often a lot of fire around that.
Oh,
And
no.
currently we're trying to keep it flexible to allow students more access to the bursary and as many people as possible to benefit. So I haven't contended it yet, but now that I'm having to be responsible for writing those policies, those standard operating procedures, and the fact that we're really going to capacitate on a national level to be more disability and inclusion centered. I need to be more aggressive in terms of laying down the rules. So that
Absolutely.
is, yeah, but that is why I'm asking and picking your brain in terms of that. That was my actual question and why I'm asking it. Thank
I
you.
think for me, ophthalmologist will be there. Yeah. Because I mean, anybody
Okay.
could get the spectacles. Anybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But thank you very much, Benedict.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Benedict. And Elam, you can also, I don't know which one, but you can also try and look at how, especially universities in, in the Western Hemisphere and things like that, how they frame their own policy. So while you're developing it, see how they frame their policy and how they navigate that nuance. Because I'm very sure that they've also come across those kind of challenges, and they now see if that is applicable, if you can apply
And
it to
maybe
our own countries.
what's HISA's role in this? Because I would assume that HISA, higher education, disability, something.
So
Yeah.
I've been attending all of the regional HITSAs for the year,
Mm-hmm.
and there are divided views. Most institutions want it allowed because the impairment is still impairing the student to properly see and interact. And as
Yes.
Unati has also explained to me, that you will get your diagnosis, but it's also subjective to the student and whether they view the diagnosis as an impairment. So I've taken that into account, and also the ICF, and I take under advisement Dr. Ike's suggestion to speak closer with institutions. But it hasn't been concluded, and I wish to just be a bit more equipped when I have the next conversation at the HITSA. Thank you so much.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Elam. All right, so Sibonello has his hand up. Sibonello, please go ahead, and then I'll read Mbali's question in the chat after Sibonello. Yeah, Sibonello, go ahead.
Good day, Benedict.
Echa,
How are you?
Grand, how are you?
I'm blessed. Should I call you Jabu or Benedict?
Jabu is me. I'm the only one that calls him Jabu.
Thank you.
But go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, since we are on the disability in education studies, there's a question that was posed, I think, on Tuesday. That's Dr. Ike asked us that is a blind person will be a doctor, So today, when we were learning, there's a last video that was played today, whereby it was shared that each and every learner in class, they must receive information. Hence, there are some of the information that are pasted on walls where the blind student won't be able to see. So now, during that break time, it gave me the thoughts and that question to reflect on the question that was asked by Dr. Ike on Tuesday, that there are blind students, I think there are blind students who do pure maths, pure maths. And pure maths, it's one of it's one of the subjects that is required, especially in medical schools. So it's given me a thought that in pure maths, there is a section, I think it's algebra, whereby there are calculations that students learn from there. We require them to perform, to calculate and give the graphs, like your 360 graphs and so forth. So now I want to know if blind students are able to read graphs in school as well to draw graphs. And if it's so, how does that is performed in school, especially for a blind person? Thank you.
Thank you. Simple answer, yes. But unfortunately, in South Africa, there are only probably 2 or 3 blind schools that offers pure maths to blind learners. Only few, because it requires, I wouldn't say, more dedication from the teachers, but it is possible. I know a guy from Free State who did pure maths. As to how he did it, well, I think now with the advancement of AI and things have become a bit much more easier. But even before the AI became so prevalent, the way not Pioneer, Princehof used to offer pure maths to blind learners. So it is possible, but with more dedication from the teachers. And I think somewhere in America, I must have heard of a blind doctor. Anything is possible, depending on who's willing to work with the student or with the person. I mean, when I got my lecturing job last year, I was so petrified because it was my first time, and normally when someone is going to do work, you often require an assistant to be with you. So what with me, it was not. It was not the same. It was not the same story. I went in the morning, and then they just said, "Your students are waiting for you," and I just have to carry it on, and it worked so well. So to answer your question shortly, it is possible.
Vanello, you're fine?
Yes, I'm fine, 100%. And
Yeah.
I'm also learning from Benedict's answers that it's clear now that this practical experiment, it starts from the global north side, and then we follow here in the global south, of which we are still behind in terms of accessibility for blind people. But I'm grateful, as you mentioned, that with the assistant of AI as well, it is possible. Thank you.
So, yes, but just to clarify there, I know that the global north always give us information, but I think hence I said I have a decolonial name. For me, I'm a very much proponent of decolonial approach. Yes, the global north, they have the resources, but I think what we need to do from our side is not always to look at what they are doing, but rather think of how things we could do them for ourselves. Because sometimes, I mean, there's been some studies here in South Africa that is trying to critique inclusive education from a African perspectives, looking at are there ways in which inclusive education could work, but not using the model from the global north, but using the global south model. But yes, to say AI does, I think it's going to shift at least the lens of inclusion for students with disabilities in the world.
Thanks. Thanks, Benedict. And I want to say, just also remember what he said. He talked about the willingness of, he said, depending on the willingness of the teachers or whoever to do it. And that's what I keep stressing about in terms of the attitudinal barriers. And if you remember that question I asked, where I said, so Benedict was, I was teaching fourth year medical students, and one of the students asked that, I mean, he doesn't see any way in which a person who is blind is able to be a surgeon. So I told him, while I can't conceptualize a way now, but I threw the question back at him. I said, have you ever sat down to think about ways in which someone who is blind can be a surgeon? Even once in your life? He said, no. I said, so if you've not thought about it, how do you think we can never come to a way in which that can happen? I mean, the far back, there was the thinking that someone who is blind can never have an education, can never read, until we invented Braille, things like that. So I'm just buttressing what Benedict said in terms of the willingness of people to, find a way for that. All right, thank you. So Mbali says in the chat, he said, to what extent are special schools effective in supporting the academic, emotional, and developmental needs of learners with disabilities? And how does this form of educational support influence their social inclusion, peer relationships, and participation in wider community life?
Oh, that's like a master's question there.
The master's thesis.
Exactly.
Mbali, you're still in BGD.
It depends how much time. I think special schools, I mean, this is why people like us are here. I'm a product of a special school. Uh, I think to some degree they are effective because students still go there. But I think the last question about the social integration or social inclusion, I think that's just this where perhaps the question that we might need to explore, and it's something because we people live in such a segregated space. So how then, once they finish school, do we integrate them in the society? So very good question there. I think it's something that with the prevalence of special schools, um, I think it would change the narrative because then one will be able to know that as much as there is Kakamba from a Fata school, blind school in the Eastern Cape, but there is also Peter in maybe, I don't know, Peter School or St. James, but they are both blind. I think it now depends on the choice of the parent, but ultimately because society is aware of these kids who are both blind but attend to different schools, I think that might change the narratives around stigma and disability inclusion. So special schools for me, I'm not. I understand their role, but like with your question, I also worry about their effect in as far as the social inclusion. Yes, there are other issues that one could talk about the limitations of the career of the curriculum in the, like I said, it's only out of 22 special schools for the blind, only two that I know of offer pure maths. So you can imagine then what happened to the remaining 20. That means those learners are doing maths late. As a result, it limits their opportunities entry to the universities in this province that uh, we have we have three tertiaries and now at UCT, I don't know. Um, at least I haven't heard of any blind learner for the past, I think, 4 years who came from any of the schools that are around the Western Cape. So I think that to me on its own sort of give us a clear indication of the gap in as far as the what is happening at the special schools and the transition to tertiary institution. But at least there is a shift in when you look at schools like the province like Limpopo. When you go there, you'd find there's a huge number of learners who come from special schools. So I think it's a bit of a complex issue, but there is a shift at least.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Benedict, Mbali, you're satisfied or you need more clarity?
Sorry, Ike.
No, I was saying Mbali, if she's okay with your answer or does she need more clarity? Okay, she says she's good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Then next person with a hand up is Mandisa. Mandisa, please go ahead. Remember, just introduce yourself and then you can ask your question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mandisa, and I do admin for Bishop's College in Cape Town. My question is, I think I once tried to study on this. Special schools versus just normal universities. I want to find out is it okay to have an environment where learners are excluded from everyone else in primary and high school level, but then thrown into the mainstream at universities? How is the adjustment for that for the learners? And is it something that maybe needs to be changed? Or because I think in the beginning I was for the idea that, you know what, let's do away with special schools and let's include everyone. But the more I explore this topic, the more I realize that inclusion is not just as simple as let's all have everyone in the same class. There's some situations where it's literally impossible. Like if you had to have a learner who's got cerebral palsy or something, and they're they may be not even able to sit in a wheelchair, maybe they lie in a bed. How would you include them in a mainstream school? So my question is, main special schools and universities, are learners who come from special schools prepared to fully join universities like all the other learners? Thank you.
Yes, they are When I was at special school, we used to attend Career Expo like any other learners. So I think in a way, subconsciously, they were trying to show us the world outside of the space that we are in. But what sometimes often happen is that I think because students survive, people with disabilities can adapt, even though it's quite difficult. I was saying to a friend of mine some time ago that I often find that inclusive spaces can be also exclusionary for students with disabilities, because you come in, the only space that is a bit more accommodative to you, it's you're going to a classroom and going to your room. Other spaces like your sports, it's only now that UCT is trying to drive the Paralympic sports. So to answer your question, I think also it depends on the number of students with disabilities at that institution. If I went to EWC, there were quite few of us, so it was easy for us to cope and adapt. But I'm sure even if even if I was alone, I would have adjusted. But that's a very good question, and I think this is where the DSU fit in, the disability services would fit in to ensure that students with disabilities feel accommodated and included in RES. I mean, you find we do get friends, sometimes partners. So it's easy, but let me rather say the accommodation is there, but it wouldn't be as easy as like any student who just came out of a mainstream school, because again, you come from a special school where everything was given to you, but now you're in a mainstream school or inclusive space, so you need to adjust to that. For me, one of my biggest challenge was around my identity, because I never used a white cane when I was at special school, because a white cane to me symbolizes an um, old blind man sitting outside a shopping mall begging. As I told you, I had dreadlocks. At some point, feel free to laugh at me, I even had a gold tooth, but thanks to Savannah, it's gone. So being that kind of a person or young person coming to a mainstream space, going to class holding a white cane, and then I'm using a recorder to record the lecture. So all of those sort of adjustment or ways of accommodating me as a blind person, at some point, at least for the first couple of months, made me feel slightly uncomfortable. But then through engaging, going to tutorials, submitting tests, I realized that actually we're all the same. I end up having more friends and even becoming a class rep. So yeah, I'm not sure that answer your question.
Anissa?
It does. Yes, thank you so much, Benedict. And I just want to ask one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If there was an idea of a special universities, would you advocate for that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because again, we're reinforcing that segregation. I think for me,
Oh.
I'd rather work towards ensuring that inclusion is there from the moment the student come to the university, and not just accommodation in the sense of going to a classroom and then come back. because sometimes some people may take advantage of students with disabilities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
And these are very good questions. Thanks for that. It's good to hear Benedict's view on that. But before, I don't know if any other person has any question, but while I wait for any other person, Benedict mentioned, he gave the practical example of what Prof. Wottermeyer was saying, what I highlighted before. If you remember, he spoke about listening, feeling, and thinking. So like a teacher should be able to listen, feel, and think, and not just go into the diagnostic mode. And if you remember, the example he gave was that a learner with visual impairment, a teacher is feeling frustrated because the learner is not learning Braille and is not going through orientation and mobility. Prof. Wottermeyer was saying that if the teacher listens, feels, and thinks, the teacher will be able to pick up that the learner's main concern was their identity. And Benedict just mentioned now that one of the biggest things he was worried about coming to was his identity. So Benedict just gave a practical example of what he was trying to explain in the video which he made, that it's important to know what the main barrier is. That is not, even though the other ones are important, it may not be the one that the learner is or the student considered as most important at a particular time. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other person with any other questions? We still have about 17 minutes to go. Okay, while we wait for someone, Benedict, I have one. I'd like to hear your view. What do you think? So, in a school, and when you were going through special school, what do you think teachers need to do to, you see, they want to support a learner, they say you want to support a learner with visual impairment, but sometimes that can lead to being overprotective. Any tips on what they can do to avoid, pushing beyond and start being, overprotective of the learner?
That's the thing. Well, I think, fortunately, in our case, our teachers, they were not that protective. Okay. Instead, they tried to show us that for some, I don't know, I'm thinking that our blindness does not really matter. Like when I was at school, from grade 3 to grade 7, we were introduced a bit to writing because I went to a semi-poor school. They could not afford computers. So we wrote with typewriters. But from high school, from grade 8 to grade 12, we did not use any Braille for writing because the idea was we are preparing you for the outside world. Nobody knows how to read Braille. Therefore, you need to we want to ensure that you are well equipped to cope outside. So as a result, I knew that my blindness does not really matter. What matters is for me to try to adjust to the seeing world. Even when I write, I need to make sure that my fingers, which again, those are, one could say, the benefits now that even if I don't have JAWS, I can still type. But the problem with that is that, how do you write an essay without knowing what you are writing? I could give you so many horrible stories of us writing, and then you think you are writing question 5, maybe number 6, and then teacher, oh, sorry, the ribbon is off. I can only see your name here. But in front of you, you're thinking, well, I should be fine. I'm about to finish this question paper. But there's nothing. So you need to start all over again. But to answer the question, it goes to what Brian and Michelle would talk about when you say being aware of your positionality and looking at the child as someone who needs care, but as a student who needs education. If you can look at this person as someone who need education and care, you would be able to divorce yourself from being overly protective, which I often find sometimes it's mostly the parents who are overly protective of the kids. I mean, even the whole idea of, I know, yes, some schools don't prefer it, but even the idea of taking a child, making a decision between a special school or mainstream school, it's all because of the child feels that my child would cope better if they're in a space that I know that is well secured and compared to being a mainstream school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very true. So being present, in fact, a lot of the videos we've been watching have been stressing about, even sooner, stressed about it, knowing the child, knowing the child, and not just assuming. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I see Doreen has a question. Doreen, go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Hi, Benedict. I just want to find out from you, as you're saying that previously there were so many disadvantaged things that happened in the classroom, but now I just want to find out from you, currently, do teachers implement the ECC, the expanded core curriculum, whereby for the visual impairment student, do they teach them those daily skills of saying that, okay, you are supposed to be walking in this path when you get into this classroom? This is your desk, and then I have duct taped it, and so many forth. And also, do they do the learner orientation mobility? Are they doing it currently?
The teachers in special schools or in general?
In general, in both.
No, I think, I mean, the O&M is only now going to be professionalized, I think from next year. That means we might be able to see more of them going into the schools. But as for the ECC, it's something that when we as IDEA were still communicating with the education School of Education, was something that we're trying to promote, that how about it also could be part of the modules for teachers who are studying, because especially if we are going to be yes, sorry about that, especially if we are going to um, especially if we're moving towards inclusive education. So it's highly important, I think, for me, crucial, that all teachers should at least have the basic knowledge of reasonable accommodation, orientation, and mobility. But at the moment, no. But there is an awareness, at least. People are aware that courses do exist that can assist.
Doreen?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, probably maybe because we have 10 minutes, probably maybe our last question, but we'll see. Alice has a question in the chat. Let me read it out. It says, you describe special schools as harmonious and homogeneous places where you were all the same with no barriers among yourselves. But you also said what you lacked was integration with the outside world, that you sometimes felt slightly offish, not connecting with the world. In other words, special schools were or are producing belonging and exclusion simultaneously. What does that contradiction tell us about the limits of inclusion as it's currently practiced? And also, if special schools create a sense of safety and belonging, but also isolation at the same time, does that mean inclusion as we practice it today is more symbolic than meaningful?
I think it is meaningful. I said it was homogeneous and a create a sense of belonging, because that was the only space that was available at that time. At least for my parents, they believed that this is the only space, and it worked. It was okay because I survived there. There were so many things that, like I said, the school that I went to we did not have mathematics, so there was the limitations of.
Mm.
I end up doing what I studied purely because of the school that I went to. My cousin went to quote unquote Model C schools, but I did not, even though my parents to some degree could have afforded. So I think for me, the as we are now, the idea of moving towards inclusive education is to change the sort of narratives that are to create more meaningful inclusive education in a more inclusive spaces instead of segregating learners, but let's desegregate and put everybody like the way the transition when we moved to the democratic dispensations and the majority of black learners moved to Model C schools. So I would find that the same sort of model could also be applied with disability inclusion. Yeah. It might not be easy in the beginning, and even now there's still issues around racial segregations in schools, and I believe that the same thing might also occur around ableism in the mainstream schools. But the world is not a perfect space. What's if we, at least from where we are, if we can show that there is sufficient resources and well enough information around accommodation for learners with disabilities, I think we could, to some degree, achieve inclusive education as we hope, or as it is prescribed in the white paper.
Thanks, Benedict. Alice, you good with the answer, or you want to? Okay, giving a thumbs up. It's good with the answer.
Oh,
thanks, Benedict. You're really taking us deep into the ways in which these views manifest and what could be the possible ways to start thinking around them.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that our colleague, our friend Aman and I would often use to debate about that. Do we think that with the inclusive education, are we not going to create the same sort of crisis that we see or that we experience when we come to universities? And I said, perhaps in the beginning it might be because there are few of us that come to university. So the more learners become more the more learners with disabilities occupy mainstream schools, I think at some point it will try to limit those sort of perceptions and misperceptions about disability. Yeah, I mean, like we did the project we did with the SLF last year in the Platenbergs Bay. When you look at those videos with those learners, they are fully integrated in the schools. They have teacher assistant, and the other learners, they love them, they understand them. But obviously it can't be all, but I'm sure, but from what we could gather is that they are fully integrated in the space. And with the course that we did, we sort of show them the accommodation in classroom, but in as far as the social integration in the community, parents would say they were concerned about taking their kids to those mainstream schools. But throughout the years, they can see the progress in as far as their kids being accommodated and accepted in the community.
Yeah, thanks, Benedict. Then Isandra put, I'm not sure, I don't think it's a question, probably it's a comment, it's a long one. So let me just read it, and if you have any reaction to it. She said, Alice, so the previous lady who asked that question, Alice, say, Alice, your question also made me think about South Africa's history of racial segregation. During apartheid, separation was often justified by claiming that different groups would be better served in separate spaces. While the historical context and purpose are different, I think your question challenges us to ask whether separating learners, even with good intentions, can sometimes limit opportunities for interaction, mutual understanding, and equal participation in society. At the same time, I don't think the answer is as simple as saying all special schools should disappear. The videos showed us that deaf schools can provide something mainstream schools often fail to provide, like language, culture, identity, and a genuine sense of belonging. The real issue then is not separation alone, but whether learners have meaningful choices and equal opportunities to participate in society beyond school. Then she goes further, perhaps this is where UDL becomes important. If mainstream schools genuinely embrace universal design for learning, recognize South African Sign Language, and value deaf culture rather than expecting deaf learners to adapt, then inclusion could become meaningful rather than be merely symbolic. Until then, asking learners to leave spaces where they feel they belong without transforming mainstream schools may simply replace one form of exclusion with another. Then last sentence or paragraph, for me, this raises a broader question. Are we trying to include deaf learners in hearing spaces, or are we trying to transform education so that both deaf and hearing cultures are equally recognized and valued? I think there is an important difference between the two. Quite interesting.
And what's the difference, if I may ask?
Come again, Benedict.
I'm saying, what's the difference? I love the last statement. There's a difference. What is the difference? And again, the whole notion of the deaf culture, I think for me, those are sort of more identity politics than anything else. Who said that even if we include deaf learners in our mainstream schools, that will have an impact on the deaf culture?
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, a deaf, if it's culture is learned. Who knows, though, by integrating, we might have a deaf culture being in not only among the deaf people, but for everybody.
I mean, that will be, to me, that will be a further step in inclusion.
It is.
Whereby in the mainstream school, deaf culture thrives also.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what is deaf culture?
That's a good question. I don't want to pick on Kelebohile. Kelebohile use sign language. I don't pick on him, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yep. Yeah. And is it only because of the language, or I mean, I did anthropology, so my sort of understanding of culture might be slightly bit more different. Yeah, but anyway, like I said, topic for another day. But very good points of reflections from your class, Ike. I really, I loved, yeah. But these are the questions that we need to interrogate. But I think I think for me, the ultimate goal is ensuring that learners with disabilities receive quality education, which ultimately would result in them being integrated in the society.
Yes, thanks, Benedict. Yep. Time is up, but Cedric, last question or last comment. You're on mute. You're still muted. You need to unmute, Cedric.
It's just a comment. Benedict does not.
Cedric, yes, you are here.
That's why I didn't want to say anything at the beginning. But in any case, yeah, just something that you said earlier on. At some point, you mentioned at some point, and then I'm just going back to Suna's verb, including. She's talking about the present. So one theme that came to mind is from Jabbar's video and your responses and your videos that we listen to now. You both mentioned that the lack to career choice. So my question is, if at this point in time, if the full curriculum that is available to mainstream schools, if that curriculum becomes available to special schools, would that make a difference?
It will. It might. I'm saying might because again, I am not sure if those teachers that are there would be able to deliver it to learners with disabilities in a way that they need to receive it. I mean, as it is now, when I did my research, I discovered that in all schools for the blind that I focused on, all of those teachers had no training in blindness. They did normal teaching qualification and then just got a job. And as somebody was saying, you learn at the job. So for me, it's yes, it could, provided there is enough information to assist the teacher so that they could deliver it to the learners.
Thank you, Benedict. You can go have that red wine now.
No, God.
Well,
After all,
invite him
it's
to come and
Pooza
have it.
Thursday. After all, it's Pooza Thursday, yeah.
Isanda has something in the chat. Okay, I'll just read this, then we end, then we close the session. We're 2 minutes out. She says deaf cultures refers to shared language, values, traditions, experiences, and identity of deaf people who see themselves as members of a cultural and linguistic community rather than as people defined by a disability. A central part of deaf culture is sign language, which is more than a communication tool. It is the foundation of social interaction, learning, storytelling, and cultural identity. For many deaf people, being deaf is something to be celebrated rather than fixed. This is why many members of the deaf community distinguish between deaf, the audiological condition of hearing loss, and deaf with capital D, a person who identifies with deaf culture and community. This is also why the videos emphasize that mainstream inclusion should not come at the expense of deaf identity. If a deaf learner is placed in a mainstream school without access to sign language, deaf peers, or deaf role models, they may gain physical access to the classroom but lose opportunities to develop their cultural identity and sense of belonging. In that sense, deaf culture reminds us that inclusion is not only about access to education, it is also about respecting and preserving people's language, identity, and community. So last paragraph, for example, just as isiXhosa speakers value their language because it carries their history, identity, and culture, deaf people value South African sign language, SASL, because it carries their way of communicating, learning, and belonging. If we ask isiXhosa speakers, isiXhosa speaking learners to stop speaking isiXhosa to fit into school, we will see that as a loss of culture. We see that as a loss of culture. Similarly, expecting deaf learners to rely only on spoken language can undermine their cultural identity. So, something to reflect on. Benedict, if you want to make any comment about it, it's fine. Otherwise, yeah, we'll just.
Yeah, I guess that's a very interesting perspective. But I mean, isn't the whole idea of the deaf language itself? I mean, where does it originate? Isn't it we're trying to communicate what I'm saying now? So a deaf person could also use their hands, but ultimately the message would be the same. I want to say learners must be in school, and it's in English. If someone had to say it in closer, it's still the same. It's still the same sort of message, but in different mode of. It's same different language, and does that equate culture?
Well, I think. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying, but what Isanda is saying, that way, because it's not mainstream way of communicating, it carries its own, values, traditions, experiences, and things, and those things are woven into, all culture. So because of that, and that's why what you're saying also matters, in that how can we
So
make
does
sure,
that mean
how can we start creating
so does that mean
in university also?
So does that mean So does that mean if we say that in the deaf culture, if a child is a Xhosa person and is deaf, are they going to divorce themselves from being the Xhosa person and be a deaf person outside of the
No.
Xhosa culture?
No, I don't think so, because
I believe
both
that
are,
we are positioned in society and we follow the traditions and the practice of the geographical area in which we are in.
I
Yeah,
think,
but
but
it's
let me,
something that the class could explore.
yes,
But very
But let me
nice
just,
debate.
yeah, very, very true. But let me just give opportunity if Kelebohile wants to say anything about it. If Kelebohile wants to say anything about it, because he has a lived experience of it. Kelebohile, you don't have to, I just thought to give an opportunity if you
And
want
based
to.
on the Kelebohile, I think she's from Northwest.
No, he's from Limpopo. That's our student from Limpopo. Sorry, not Limpopo. Lesotho. Goodness.
Lesotho.
I always confuse those two names.
But with G at the end, Kelebohile.
Come again?
Is it Kelebohile or Kelebohile?
Okay, he will tell us how best is
This
pronounced.
is fascinating.
Yeah. I call him Kelebohile. So I don't know if that's...
No, it could be right. Yeah. I mean, we had Bongi from Lesotho, so...
So really, you might want to, if you can just type in the chat. If probably maybe he's having difficulties but just like you said, we'll take the discussion further. We'll take discussion further. Kelebohile, if you have further comments about it, you can always bring it into the activity reflection online activity, or also drop me an email and I'll communicate that to Benedict. Okay, you can drop your views in the email, send it to me, and then I'll send it to Benedict. Then we can take it further.
Shukran for that.
Oh, okay. He says in the chat, you are spot on, Isanda. So he agrees with what Isanda is saying. He agrees with what Isanda is, the comments she's making. Okay. Thanks for that, Kelebohile. Unati, any last comment you want to,
No, I wanted to agree with Isanda in terms of what deaf culture means. And I just wanted to, I don't know if Benedict has got if he's ever been to a deaf community. I come from Umtata, Benedict, and there by Efata School for the Blind and Deaf is a community of blind and deaf people. They settled there, they've got their homes there, they work around the school and around town. And in that community, they use sign language. And my understanding of deaf culture is that the people who stay there are deaf, using sign language, but they are mostly Xhosa people. And that community grew from the people that were going to Efata school, and they settled around the school and they built around the school. And now it has become a hub for most people who are deaf. I won't say for everybody, for most people who are deaf, they've got their homes there, but they still do visit their families, their original families, and they still call themselves by their family clan names, and they practice Xhosa culture when they are with their families. But I guess they are, the deaf culture refers to the fact that over and above the identity of being a Xhosa cultural person, there is that added layer. So I'm agreeing with Isanda.
Okay. Well, I'm not. well, the school that I attended, I went to Bartimia. So it's a school for the deaf and blind. So I was kind of also in some way exposed to the deaf people or deaf culture. Sorry for the incorrect PC. But it sounds to me as if we only limit when it comes to the deaf community language, hand sign language as a means of the means of communication, sign language as be all like a determining factor of their culture, whereas the practice, rituals, church, everything that people do is still within their geographical area. In Umtata, they still go to church. The pastor might be preaching in sign language, but still talk about God. I'm sure they go to the mountain, so everything that they do is what anybody who is in that area is doing. The only difference here is just that for them, their means of communication is sign language, and which one could even argue and say that is that sign language. Is it a Xhosa sign language or is it an English sign language? Because that's
So you
another
can see-
again. Yeah. But anyway, I hear you.
There is. Sorry, I hear that even in sign language there are dialects. And among sign language users, they can actually tell that this one is not coming from this region, probably coming from another region. They all use South African sign language, but they do have dialects. Like we Xhosas have got isiMpondo and isiXhosa and what, or the Nguni languages would have the different types of languages falling under the Nguni languages. So there are sign language dialects as well.
So that's interesting. So that means someone might be using South African sign language to sign, but there are certain signs that will be particular to isiXhosa or other cultures.
Yes, yes.
So they're influenced by the Xhosa language.
Kilebohile might assist me here, but yes, I believe so. Even for sign language users, when they go to a different area or a different region, there are new sounds that they learn.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's only language. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, this is very, very interesting. Hopefully, as we engage with Kilebohile more, he will also enlighten us on these areas. Yeah. Wow, this has been really rich, people. And Benedict, thank you very much for joining us and for really, really putting a kind of, how will I say it, authentic lens, to what the videos we've watched and the conversations we've been having. Yeah, so thanks very much for joining us, man. And always good to have you join us for the PGD DSC course. So like Cedric said, yeah, the glass of red wine. You can go have the glass of red wine. And everybody, thanks for joining us. And I'm sure Unachi will agree. I really enjoy you're not just doing surface level engagement. You are really thinking through things with the questions you're asking. And so just keep it up. It means the change is happening because you're being critical. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
You have
Good night.
a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.